Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm Dr. Robin and this is Russ. Together we are the co-founders of the Whole Food Muscle Club, and we've written the book, How to Feed a Human the Whole Food Muscle Way. A lot of you have downloaded the starter kit, which you can get either by being a member of the Whole Food Muscle group. It's pinned to the top of the group, or you can go directly to wholefoodmuscle.com and download it. And one of the things that's included in there is a staples list. And included in the staples list is one of Russ's bread recipes. And if you have the book, How to Feed a Human the Whole Food Muscle Way, there's a bread recipe in there as well. Okay. And we've been getting a few questions from people who've been having, challenges making the bread work. And so Russ has done a live before making the bread, but we wanted to kind of walk through it. And I'm going to talk through it while he does it, because I notice things that he does that he doesn't usually talk about.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. So you already have 3 cups of flour.
3 cups of 100% organic whole wheat flour already in the bowl.
Okay. He's going to do 1 more cup, and I asked, he was actually doing it before we left for the gym to get set up for this, and I said, wait, because I want them to see how you measure the flour, because if it were me and you told me to put 4 cups, I would just, grab the cup and, scoop it up and be good to go and dump it in there. But that's not how Russ does it. So,
you're ruining my pile.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ruin your pile. So explain to them why you don't do it that way.
So what I learned is when it comes to baking, when they say a cup of flour, they don't mean a compressed cup. They mean a fluffy cup of flour. Mm-hmm. And so how do you do that? You kind of air it as you're scooping so that you're not getting compressed flour.
Which
so
means if
never,
you scoop it the way I do,
you
it
never,
compresses
in recipes, you're never supposed to scoop it.
Which I didn't know that.
So I always kind of fluff it, and then I just kind of dump it in there and try to keep it as fluffy as I can. I think I still have another cup worth here.
There is. It's close, but it'll be fine. So he uses his mixing spoon to put it in his measuring cup.
And I've had some people ask, is it okay to use metal spoons, stuff like that? I've never had a problem, nor have I ever heard of it being a problem. So I'm like, yeah, I always use a metal spoon. Mainly because it's our strongest and biggest spoon that I can stir with. So okay. So we have 4 cups of flour in there, and we still have enough to feed the starter.
I'm very happy about that. The starter's very happy about that.
Yes, I am sure. So then I just use, this is Fleshman's active yeast, dry yeast. And so I'll use 1 teaspoon of that.
And the reason that we don't just use only the starter, the sourdough starter, is because for it to rise, you have to knead it, and you have to let it sit, and you have to making sourdough bread is a lot more work than this bread is. So we do use the yeast with it for that. Right.
Now I do add salt. However, I believe that you probably can get away without the salt if you didn't need it. Now it calls for 1 teaspoon. What I actually do is I go very light on the salt.
A scant teaspoon, officially, apparently.
Right. And the reason why I do it, and by the way, you notice I shake it in there, I don't just dump it in there. And I do that because I think that if you just have lumps and you're trying to stir it and get it mixed, it doesn't mix as well. I don't know if that's true or not, that's just the way I do it.
Fair enough.
But here's the reason why I don't add a full teaspoon of salt, because I also add, this is everything seasoning. And it's basically the same seasoning you find in everything bagels.
Yeah, there's also a brand called Everything But the Bagel. So there's several different brands of this, but it's seeds, and this version does have a little bit of salt in it, right?
It has salt, has sesame seeds, has let me just tell you.
Garlic, other side maybe.
Oh, I can't read that.
Can't read that. Not with the. So we don't have the overhead lights on, so you can't read.
Right. So yeah, it has sesame seeds. It has black seeds. Everything seasoning. Everything seasoning is all I can tell you.
So how much do you put in there?
I'll put in 2 tablespoons.
Okay. Again, sprinkling.
Sprinkling. Just because in my mind I make up that and those are generous tablespoons. I'm not like.
So a scant teaspoon of salt and a generous couple of tablespoons of everything seasoning.
Right. Now, what I'm going to do today, because normally what I'll do is throw in another tablespoon of sesame seeds, but we don't have sesame seeds. We run out. So what I'm doing
Somebody
today,
failed to order them from Amazon.
So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to throw in a tablespoon of sunflower seeds.
And you can put any seeds in this you like. If you like pumpkin seeds better, you can do that.
Matter of fact, I'm throwing a 2nd tablespoon.
Oh, you are?
I'm getting crazy today.
All right.
So yeah, absolutely any seeds you want.
Oh, I wanted to eat that. It's a fasting day. Can't eat the seeds.
Right. So now what I'll do is dry. I will mix this up, and it's just tossing it around. You know, the funny thing about when you mix this flour,
The seeds
and
disappear.
I was just going to say,
It's bizarre.
I have black seeds in there, I have tan seeds in there, I have white seeds in there, and all I can see is the flour.
Yeah, the seeds just disappear into
So
it.
how do you know when it's mixed well? Yeah, guess. Very scientific. Sorry for the clanking.
That's a lot of mixing. I didn't realize you mixed it dry so much.
Yeah, I do. I mix it pretty well dry.
Told you, I don't make the bread.
Okay. So the next thing I'll put in there is we use sourdough starter.
You're going to show them the label
Yeah,
that
which
says
doesn't
organic
Applesauce. Yeah, it doesn't really work.
So we have sourdough starter. You don't need it to make this bread. You can
Right.
absolutely make this bread without the starter. I got the starter because someone local gave me some, and our local friends, I give them starter whenever, if they want it, I share our starter with them. You don't need it. If you do want it, you can make your own. It's a little bit of a labor-intensive process, but you can make your own starter. Some people who I've given starter to actually like feed their starter and do all this stuff to make sure it's really strong before they make bread. We literally keep it in the refrigerator. Russ uses it. I feed it, and we stick it back in the refrigerator when he uses it again.
I don't know if you can be able to see that. I guess you can a little bit. So it's like up to this full. I will use all of that except for maybe a tablespoon or two, which you'll have to refeed it.
And then I feed it with
stay
like
with
a third of a cup of flour.
So I'll just put it in there.
And you can see it's kind of stretchy the way you'd expect dough to be, because it's
That's
been.
enough, right?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
plenty.
Okay. So now I don't mix that until I put water in it. Now the recipe in the book calls for 2 1/4 cups of water. What I have found is,
Really, is that all?
yes.
Oh.
What I have found is that's not a very consistent measuring when I'm making this bread. Depending on the flour, depending on the ingredients I put in there, it varies.
And depending upon the humidity.
A lot of things. So where it could be either too wet or too dry. So instead what I do is I like to I'll pour in, and I've gotten pretty good at this. So I'll pour in a bunch.
Some.
Yes.
Oh, he's doing a Robin measure. He's
Right.
doing some.
Right. So, and then I'll do it, I'll piecemeal it because I just feel like I get a more consistent.
So what are you looking for? Well, how do you know when you have enough water in
I'll
it?
show you when it's done.
Okay.
Because
And
I really,
hopefully he'll give you some
Yeah.
descriptors. We have a
Exactly.
comment. Let's see who commented. Lisa, do you sift the flour in a sifter?
I do not. Well, I know sifting it will make it fluffier, and I think that's why people do it, but I'm not a baker, so maybe that's not.
The other thing too is we use a lot of this flour because Russ makes this bread about once a week for us. We eat about a loaf a week, and so our bread doesn't get clumpy. Your flour doesn't get clumpy, which flour can do if you have a lot of humidity. So I wonder if we sifted it, if it would make it the finished product fluffier.
I don't know. I mean, I think the sourdough helps it rise more than as well as the yeast that we put in it. But so the first time I did it, I'll let you look. You can see it's still pretty dry and pretty clumpy. So not nearly enough water in there. So I'll go ahead and add some more.
Yeah, it didn't even the flour didn't even finish combining in that.
Right.
And if you use 100% whole wheat flour, you're going to end up with needing a little more water because it's denser than if you use
Yes.
white flour. We've definitely found that as well. It's been a long time since you used anything like rye flour in it.
I haven't. I was going to today because I thought I didn't have enough flour, and I know we have some oat flour, so I was going to try that. But any flour. So the recipe in the book and the recipe on the website, which is the free recipe in the recipe section.
There's a lot of places to get this recipe.
Right.
Do you use yeast in the starter? So the sourdough starter is literally just sourdough starter, and sourdough starter is created by the bacteria in your home. So what you do, and I'll give you Google this because I'm going to give you just a really short version. But what you do is you mix flour and water. It has to be filtered water because the chlorine in water will keep it from processing. But you mix flour and water. Usually, I think it's about, if I remember correctly, it's either 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 flour to water. But till you get like a dough consistency, and then you leave it sit, just covered with plastic and rubber band, and you have to feed it, and the bacteria in your home will create a sourdough starter. And that's one of the reasons why San Francisco is really well known for their sourdough.
Yeah.
And it's because of just the bacteria that's in that area. And even if you buy sourdough starter in San Francisco and you take it across the country with you, as you feed it, the starter will change and it will become based on the bacteria in your own home.
Well, before I put it, I just want to show them.
Yeah.
This is kind of the consistency I like. So let me see if I can show this to you. You can see it's how I can just move the spoon through there pretty easily, but I can't really. It'll move if I tilt it, but it doesn't like pour out.
Okay.
So hopefully that you can see that kind of consistency.
Yeah. So that's what sourdough starter is. It's different than yeast. Now, do you do anything with the top of it to make it so you end up with a pretty loaf, or do you just leave it?
I just leave it. It'll rise and even out itself.
Oh, okay, cool. It's sticky.
Maybe put that in there.
I can.
Let's see if I have a
Piece of plastic. We try not to use too much extra plastic, so I ask him to reuse it if he can. Did you find one?
I don't know yet. Yeah, that'll work.
Apparently it's more difficult than we might hope.
All right, so, and then I just use saran wrap on the top. I don't know if saran wrap is a brand or if that's actually what it is.
Plastic wrap.
Plastic wrap. Tells you how old I am. I use saran wrap.
Is the starter recipe on the website? It's not on the website. I have never actually created a starter recipe because I was actually given our starter.
Which is the best way to get it, by the way.
It's the easiest way to get it, because starting from scratch, your ring is really loud.
Okay.
Starting from scratch is really hard with starter. I've seen a lot of people where their starter just doesn't live. It's easier if someone gives it to you, but there are lots of options if you Google sourdough starter to how it works. I guess I could create one. It's not that hard. I just never did because, like I said, we were given some, and mine was mailed to me by somebody local. So I know you can, if it's not too cold and it's not too hot, you can actually mail sourdough starter to someone.
And so there it is. I mean, I put the saran wrap nice and tight. I do make sure it's a tight fit on the top, and I'll just let that sit on a day like today. So our temperature is right, it's going to be in the almost 80 today, and we don't have the air conditioner in the house. So it'll probably be ready to bake, I'd say, in what, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours?
Yeah. In the wintertime, we have to do it overnight because it takes so long to rise. So why is that? I'm sorry, I don't know what part you're asking. Why is that too? The timing, I don't know which part we were talking about.
Right.
Looks like something I need to try. It's pretty easy. It really is.
It's really easy, and what I like about it, you don't see, I'm not kneading it, I'm not playing with it a lot. I just mix it with the spoon, get that consistency, and then let it do its thing.
No, go ahead.
The only thing I do before I put it in the oven, it's at 450 degrees in a Dutch oven for 30 minutes with the top on, and then for 15 minutes with the top off, the lid off.
This is the one that we use.
That's the Dutch oven.
And this is old. I was given this as a gift in 1990.
Right.
So it's really old.
The only other thing I will do is once it's in there, I take a knife and I do put a slit down the middle
Of the
dough once it's in there. And then I also will sprinkle some more of the everything spice on top as like a top coating.
Oh, she says sometimes starters are made with yeast. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Nor do we know how the person who gave us the she's made it.
I do know how he made it.
Oh, okay, never mind.
He made it from flour. Like, he does the whole huge process because
Okay.
he makes sourdough bread. The other thing you need to know is that you can't let it rise by sitting it on a granite countertop.
Right.
It's too cold; it won't rise properly.
Right.
So you're going to want to either we set it on our table, which is made of wood, or set something like this underneath it to get it up and off of your of the granite, because
Yes.
it'll be too cold.
Good point.
And like I said, in the wintertime, we have to actually let it rise overnight because it's cold in the house.
It
You know,
is, yeah.
we only heat our house to about 68 degrees in the winter, which is freezing,
Yeah.
but it's cold. In the summertime, we only air condition our house to 80 because we like it warm, and so it rises really nicely in the summer.
Right.
Is there anything else we need to tell them? I have to think about it.
No, what I'll try to remember to do is take a picture of it once I put it in the Dutch oven before it rises, so you can just see
Before
it.
you bake it.
Bake it. Right.
After it rises.
After it rises, before you bake it. Thank you. And then again, once we pull it out, so you can see the finished product.
Yeah. And if we can take a picture of it when it's in the bowl after it rises, that would be good too.
Okay.
Charlie does love this bread.
Yes, Charlie's had an opportunity to have some.
He's had some, and they make it themselves
Yes,
too.
they do.
So
Yeah.
I definitely recommend, if you haven't given it a try, the recipe is the free recipe on wholefoodmuscleclub.com. If you go to recipes, it's the free recipe there. There's a copy in the How to Feed a Human book, and if you download the starter kit from wholefoodmuscle.com, it's part of the staples list. So this recipe is a lot of different places. We highly recommend it. It's pretty easy to make. Russ makes it pretty consistently.
Right, and the only difference between what I just made and what's on the places Robin said is that those have half and half whole wheat flour.
Do they all?
Yes.
Oh.
Half and half whole wheat flour and unbleached organic white flour.
Yeah.
I have since gone away from the white flour completely and only use organic flours that are the whole grain. But that's your own personal preference. It does rise a little bit more if you put in the white flour. So again, that's another preference.
Yeah, and I see we've been on for 15 minutes. It doesn't take him 15 minutes to make this bread. Usually, it's because we've been talking through it. Yeah. Can you get that flour at the natural food store? Would it be good for diabetes? Okay, so go ahead.
I was gonna say yes, you can. However, we actually found that it's cheaper at the local supermarket.
Yeah.
We buy their brand, I think they call it Organics, and it's organic whole wheat flour, and we found it was cheaper to get it that way.
So this bread is better for you than a lot of other breads that are for diabetics because it is whole wheat flour. It does have seeds in it. It is not as it's not as good for you as say eating a sweet potato, which is going to be more whole starch. It's not as good for you as eating farro, which is more of the whole grain. So if you are diabetic, I would definitely say if you want to eat bread, this is a better option. I would not say if you're not eating bread that, oh, jump on this because it's great for diabetes. I don't think that that's the right answer for it, but it's definitely better. Brenda uses the organic whole wheat flour at Safeway. So she's using the same flour that we are.
That's exactly the same flour we use.
And it does. It works fine. And it's like we said, it's cheaper there. So we were using stone ground.
Yes. Now that, if you can get that, we actually like that, but they discontinued it. We can't find it.
Yeah, we really like stone ground. It's a different consistency. It took more water than this does because it's not quite as floury. That's a funny word. Powdery as this flour is. So if you can find stone ground flour, definitely do that. You just might need a little bit more water.
Again, organic stone ground.
Yes.
That's an important factor.
Yes, that's true.
When it comes to wheat, you want to make sure it's organic.
You want to get organic, yeah. I think that's all I've got for them for today.
I think that's it. Wow, it's a long one today.
It is very long today. I'm going to feed the starter now, which basically means I'm going to take a little bit of flour that's left in here, put it in there, add a little water, and mix it. I'll leave it sit on the counter, and then I'll tuck it in the refrigerator in a couple of hours.
And I'm going to go set this on a wood surface so it's off the cold granite. Remember, don't keep it on the cold granite or it won't rise as well.
And make sure you're not using water that has chlorine in it. You want to filter it because the chlorine will keep your yeast from activating.
Good point.
All right, I think that's all the tips we have for them. Oh, how much carbs does it have? And we don't know.
We've not sent it to a lab and had it actually...
and we don't count carbs, so I can't really tell you how many carbs are in it. I know our diet is 80%, at least 80% carbohydrates, but how many are in this bread, I couldn't say.
Right, and just remember that carbohydrates is the main fuel for your muscles in your body.
Yeah, your body needs carbs.
Carbohydrates.
Yeah, and if you're diabetic, it's due to fat in the system, which maybe it's time we do one of those, do another thing of what causes diabetes.
We'll go through that again as well.
All right, let's go.
Well,
it's a fasting day.
We could just keep going, obviously.
We talk about this forever.
So thanks for staying with us this long. With that, we'll say, eat real food, mostly plants. Have a great day, guys.
Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.